10 years ago, I picked up a guitar for the first time and had no clue what I was doing. I remember how excited I was to start until I realized how much work actually goes into it. Then, I almost quit right off the bat. But over the last 10 years, I've not only learned how to improvise myself, but taught my students the same concepts I'm about to show you that make improvising with ease possible. The biggest thing you're missing when trying to improvise is an understanding of what you're doing. Whether you have ideas in your head or you're just trying to play in the pentatonic scale, you don't understand the music you're playing over, or else you wouldn't have this problem. So you need to get down the three core concepts of music, which are scales, triads, and diatonic chords, and they all play into each other. Let me explain. So if we were to go and take our major scale, that's C major, and we count with the notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just that idea of counting with the notes is all we need to understand all three of these concepts. So let's start with the scale. We just went over counting up with the scale pretty quickly. But something important to remember is not just the idea of counting up with the scale, but the idea of actually knowing the scale. You might know C major already in this one spot, but what if I said, play C major on the 12th fret of the E string? You might say, wait, there's not a C there. And in a way, you're right. The 12th fret of the E string is E, but C major exists there, and it would look like this. So it's important to think about whether or not you actually know your scale. And the way you learn your scale is just by drilling it across the fretboard. But just doing that isn't going to make you be able to naturally or magically improvise. If it did, way more players would be able to improvise. But there's tons of players who learn their scales all the way across the fretboard and then go, wait, what? Why am I still lost? Why can I still not improvise? And that's because you haven't taken the time to comprehend what you're improvising over. So let's go back to that idea of counting with the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is going to tie us into our triads. Triads are just a 3-note chord, and almost every chord you know ties into the triads, whether you know it or not. For example, let's play an open C chord. The C chord is just a bunch of these 3-note triads stacked on top of each other. There's one on the top, one right below it, and one right below it again. But we just stack them all together, and as guitar players, we just do it thoughtlessly. We go like, oh, okay, so that's the C shape. But without breaking it down to its most basic concepts inside of what the shape is, you're not getting that far. So what are these concepts I'm talking about? Well, if we go back to counting with the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we need to figure out how we can relate that to the chord. So the only chords in C major are that first note, that third note, and the fifth note. How so? Well, we have in this open chord, we have 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. Just in order. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. And it's important to know that because these notes exist everywhere. So not only knowing the actual note names, for C I like to say keg because we got C, E, G, just a good way to remember it, but the note names and the intervals are your best bet for moving around. Because if you know your notes across the fretboard and you know C, E, G, well then you know anywhere there's a C, E, and a G, you can just build a C chord. Like, we got a G here, right? G, C, E, boom. We got an E here, E, E, C, and then open G. That's kind of a wonky little one, huh? We know we have a C here. We can do C, E, G up here. And we know we have a E here. We could do E, C like that, and then G here. So knowing the notes and knowing the intervals is going to give you a fighting chance of moving around the fretboard. But the triads are important to actually drill in, just like your scales. And a lot of guitar players never do this. We might do our scales. If you're lucky, you play your scales a lot. Most people don't even do that. But almost no guitar players actually drill their triads, which kind of boggles my mind. Because if you go to learn another instrument like the piano, it's one of the first things you learn. They're like, okay, here's triads and here's how you play them. But we go to learn guitar and it's like, here's the shapes to play this song you like. And I get it. We like playing songs we like, but also we want to be creatively free on the instrument. I'd imagine if you're watching this right now, that's somewhat attuned to your goals of actually reaching creative freedom on the guitar. Knowing these triads is very key because if we're playing a chord progression, say we're playing over a chord progression that's C, E minor, and D minor. Well, if I know the triads, that gives me a home base to play around. Like, let me improvise over that without even playing the chords, and you'll totally hear the chord changes. Most of the notes I played were the chords. So what's a good way we can actually drill these triads in? Well, I'm going to drop down below a link to all of the triads just totally for free. And here's an exercise you can use to actually lock them in. You're just going to go section by section. This is a slideshow. This is how they're sectioned out. And play all of them. These are G major triads. So spam the shit out of those. Go down and up. Slow it down. And once your hands are kind of comfortable on it, slow yourself down even further and break down the intervals inside the chord. So we have, in that example, would be 3, 5, 1, 1, 3, 5, 5, 1, 3, 3, 5, 1, and then go back up. 3, 5, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1. Sitting there and doing that is one of the most important things you can do for yourself to understand the guitar. So after you get that first spot, you go to the next slide. You do exactly the same thing there. This is kind of like our C shape if you like to connect them to the shapes. It's not my jam, but a lot of people like doing that because it connects to your knowledge base. Connecting new ideas to your knowledge base is a great way to learn them. So if we did up here, we would have 5, 1, 3, 3, 5, 1, 1, 3, 5, and then 5, 1, 3, and then back up. 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1, 5, 1, 3. Now, why is it so important to know how these numbers connect and where those intervals are? Well, that's because then you can see how the chords differ. So let's do that same G chord, but all as minor chords. If we're to play the triads like this, you'll find that only one note is actually changing, and that note being the third. The third note goes down a half step for a minor chord. So if we're to label that same first position with this new flat third, it would be like flat 3, 5, 1, 1, flat 3, 5, 5, 1, flat 3, flat 3, 5, 1. Knowing where and what these are gives you so much room to actually play over music. Most people improvise by just trying to play in a scale or play in a key, but a key isn't a song, right? The song is the song, and the song is the harmony and the chords for the most part. So understanding where and what these chords are is a huge game changer. And this kind of ties into our diatonic chords of what chords actually fit into a key. So let's go back to that idea of counting up a major scale. Go back to C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. What chords would go over those notes if we were to play chords only using notes in the scale? That's what diatonic chords are. So if we're to play the notes in C major, it would be C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, back to C. And every major key follows that same order of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, back to major. Now, what is this diminished chord? Well, the diminished chord is kind of similar to the minor chord, but now we're not flatting just the third, but the fifth note as well. So if we go back to our G major triad, flat the third, G minor triad. Now flat the fifth as well. G diminished triad. Now, I wouldn't recommend spending too much time on those until you've nailed the shit out of your major and minor triads, because it's just an extension of the same idea, and it makes it harder when you overcomplicate it on yourself. But the best way to nail the idea of these diatonic chords is to relate it to songs you already know. So let's say, here's this song. This is, I just picked this up today, Wild and Rotten by Mountjoy. We got F sharp, C sharp, B. That's how it goes. What key is that in? Well, we just went over the code to kind of finding it out. The 4 and the 5 of every major key are major chords right next to each other. So we know in that example, we got these major chords right next to each other. So those have to be our 5 and our 4, which would make our 1 F sharp. So we're in the key of F sharp, playing our 1 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord. And doing this with songs you know is so powerful for your comprehension of what you're doing.
And if this is the year where you're finally going to commit to playing guitar like a pro, one of the best things you can do is be around other players that are putting the work into improving. That's why I opened a private community where I only let players in that are doing their best to get better, and it's completely free, linked right down below.
Now, when you're actually improvising, though, there's 2 modes of going about it, which is active and passive thought. Active thought is a lot of what we were just talking about, actually breaking down these concepts and utilizing them to play over the music. So if we're going back to that song I was just playing, Wild and Rotten by Mountjoy. If I wanted to improvise over that, I would go straight to the chords, really. Like... because the chords are the music. Passive thought is using the ideas that you have so drilled into your head that you don't even need to think about it. This might right now just be fucking waffling in the pentatonic scale, right? But at the end of the day, there's no limit to what your passive thought can be. It just comes down to putting the active thought time in. I'd imagine there was a point of time where you didn't know the pentatonic scale and you sat there and went, okay, so the pentatonic scale is laid out like this. All right, you probably sat there and you played it a shit ton of times, maybe 100, maybe 500, maybe 1,000. Now you don't need to think about it as much. Well, you can achieve that level of, for lack of better words, thoughtless playing with any concept. It just comes down to drilling it. And I really believe that these active and passive thinking processes do nothing but benefit each other if you understand what they are and when you're using them. For example, when I was just playing over this song, Wild and Rotten, and I said, I'm going to play the chords, that was a very active thought moment. I was thinking, like, what are the chords and where are the notes in the chords? But since I did that now, if I wanted to go more passively with it, I would just try and summon melodies or let my hands do what they want to do on their own. Something like... And not all of that was perfect, but a lot of that came down to drilling the concepts in so well that I can pull them out without thinking about them too much. And that's why the idea of drilling your triads is so important, because you want to be able to pull the chords out of your ass, basically. Pull the chords out of your ass and just waffle around on them. Those triad shapes are the fundamentals of music. And without understanding them, you're going in blind to almost everything you play over. That was nothing crazy, but I was just trying to summon a melody, basically. And the way you get there is by linking the notes from the guitar into your head aggressively, I'll say, aggressively linking them, because you want to form that connection between your head and your ears and the fretboard so that you can bring these melodies to life. How do we do that? Well, the most efficient way is to start singing your ideas. Let's say we're playing in the key of A minor. Try and internalize that root chord into your head. Sing all the notes in it. Ba, 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 ba. Really try and get them into your head. Ba, 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 ba. Then now try and sing an idea and then play it. So bow down, bow, bow down. And it's gonna feel almost impossible to do that off the bat, but if you slow it down, ba, 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 if you slow it down, you'll be able to find the notes if you sit there and sing it, fiddle around with your guitar, and it'll form that connection so that you can start to come up with ideas more easily. Now, one of the things a lot of players never think about is trying to figure out which side of their playing their biggest limitations are on. Because I kind of think of playing as having two angles. You have your understanding of what you're playing and your technical ability of what you're playing, right? If you sat down and tried to understand what an arpeggio was and what a sweep is, you can get it and go, oh, okay, but that's not going to make your hands go, right? You have to sit there and build the techniques as well. So as you're improvising, question, where do you feel like you're getting stuck? Do you feel like you're struggling to think about and understand what you're playing? Or do you have the ideas and you understand what they are, but you just physically can't play them? And once you figure that out, what are you gonna fucking do about it? Whether it's taking the time to slow down and study what you're playing so you can understand it better, or just drilling the shit out of your techniques, you can't know what to work on if you don't know what you're missing. So it's kind of a self-reflection moment. When you're playing, are you held back by your actual technique, or are you held back more by your understanding? Because I know in my own playing, I've experienced both being more technically advanced than my understanding and understanding more than I can really technically play. And I would say it's one of those things where different areas of your playing might reflect the ideas differently. Like for me right now, if I'm to do a little self-reflection for you, I know what chords can fit outside of the box pretty well, but I haven't spent the time to really pick apart exactly why each of those chords out of the box works. I know a lot of them, I can use a lot of them, but that's a lack of understanding. And I can say that I have that lack of understanding on that side of my playing. And I can also say I'm not particularly like a shred god. Like if I try and play a crazy shred lick for you, it'll probably have a few dead notes in it. But for me personally right now, that's not particularly one of my goals. My biggest goal is teaching you right now. Once I get that rolling a little more, comes back to me a little bit later, I would say. But it's important to recognize where are you lacking and what are your goals and how can you align those two? Because if you want to be a shred lord, well, that mostly comes down to your technical ability. There's a lot of that musical understanding that goes into being a shred lord, but at the end of the day, like, you need crazy chops to be shredding like a menace. Whereas if you want to dive deeper into just general improvising and being creative and more maybe jazzy styles of playing, that comes a lot more into your thinking of the music and understanding of the music, and less so your technique. Obviously, if you want to play over chords, you need to be able to play the fucking guitar. Like, there's a point where your technique, it just isn't there and you still need to work on it. But think about what you actually need. Do you need to work on your technique? Do you need to work on your thinking? Maybe both. Maybe you need to work on different areas separately. But take a second to ponder it on your own. Maybe you can pause the video and actually sit with yourself for 5 minutes. Maybe pick your guitar up, try and play something you've been struggling with lately, and ask yourself, why are you struggling with it? Is it the technique or the actual understanding? Now, to wrap it up for all the legends who stayed around for the whole video, I'm going to actually give you a practice routine you can implement to go from where you are now to reaching these creative ideas very efficiently, only 15 minutes a day. Here's all it is. We're going to take 5 minutes and play scales only in positions you haven't played them in. So you might know C major right here, right? And maybe you know it right here. But do you know how to play C major like on 3 notes a string? Maybe not. Maybe you don't know that. Find a way to play a scale in a way you haven't done it before. I promise you can. If you watch till now, you haven't played a scale in every possible way. Those motherfuckers clicked out a while ago, I'm sure. So find a way you haven't played the scale and take 5 minutes to do that. Our next 5 minutes is going to be forcing yourself to comprehend chords. And all I want you to do for this is take a chord you already know, like C major, for example, and break apart the intervals inside of that chord. Play the C major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and figure out what the intervals that are actually in the chord are, like 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. And you probably won't be able to do it off the bat, rolling like that quick. I don't expect that from anyone. I expect you to have to sit there slowly and figure it out. But what I want you to remember is that struggling isn't a bad thing. That's just an early part of the game, an early part of understanding. Because you're sitting there and it takes you a second doesn't mean you're like a fucking loser or you suck or anything like that. It just means you're trying to comprehend a new concept that you haven't spent time wrapping your head around. So that's why we're only doing 5 minutes, because I know it's hard and I know sitting there and doing it is kind of fucking annoying when you're trying to get into it. But this is one of the most valuable things you can do for yourself. And then we're going to take 5 minutes to just sing notes with the guitar to internalize the notes. Literally go to your scale. Maybe even sing with the numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Woo! Any way you can separate the notes in your head and start to internalize them, just take 5 minutes to do that. Now, if you sat there and you watched all the way till now, you have almost an obligation to yourself to actually implement the things you learned in this video, because this video isn't meant to be like fucking just an entertainment video. If it was, I would have tried a lot harder on the edit. I can tell you that right now. I haven't even edited it yet, but I can tell you right now I would have if it was just for entertainment. This video is so you can fucking learn. And watching concepts at the end of the day doesn't particularly do shit for your playing. Like, from the time you opened this video till now, you didn't get better at the guitar unless you sat here and locked in everything I was talking about while I was talking about it. But even then, that might have given you a good understanding, maybe a little grasp of what's going on. But until you actually take the action of playing this stuff on your own, thinking about it on your own, breaking it down on your own, doing as much as you can on your own, you're not getting better. You're just lying to yourself, really. So you have an obligation to yourself now to actually implement this into your playing if you want to get better. And if you don't want to get better. You vote with your actions. Like, I know you're watching this right now and you're like, oh, I do want to get better. Oh, I do want to get... Most people aren't going to do it, though. So think about that. Do you want to be the most people who stay moderately okay at the guitar because they just don't take the action and they don't push themselves? Or do you want to be that small percentage who pushes into what they know they can do and they really make themselves succeed? Who do you want to be?
And if this video helped you out, you are the exact kind of player who usually benefits a lot from working with me to unlock the entire fretboard. So if you want to be able to come up with creative ideas all over the neck, check out this video right here to see how I help players just like you.